This story takes place in the woods of southwestern Pennsylvania. Many years ago, we heard of an old local legend revolving around a cemetery seated in the heart of state game lands, miles from any main road or house. Some of the tombstones dated back to the 1700s and were either leaning, fallen over, or broken as the tree roots grew through them. Some stories involved names on the headstones changing randomly. Howls and moans would echo through the trees surrounding the grounds as you walked. The more popular stories are that of a cult. They performed satanic rituals like animal sacrifices, and even some older local newspaper articles of missing persons have been rumored to have involvement of the Quaker Cemetery cult. Some of the missing persons were never found. It was late fall, around Thanksgiving. We were having our post-Halloween withdrawal as we were wanting to do something scary. Our friend Terry was asking if we knew of any haunted houses to explore. We started sharing stories of the Quaker Cemetery, which seemed to pique his interest. After some discussion, we decided to make the trek out and investigate the area. My brother Ben and I had been there many times before and witnessed nothing, but it was an easy place to scare someone. The four of us hop into Tom's old Buick and begin making the hour drive out to Quaker Cemetery. This was before anyone had GPS or smartphones, so we relied on Ben remembering how to get there. Terry and I fell asleep as it was late, and we had all been working very early that day. Tom and my brother smack at the back seat to wake Terry and myself up. Tom had turned off the car and headlights. Aside from the moon trying to break through the trees, it was pitch black. It's at this point that Terry starts to let on. He is having second thoughts about walking around the cemetery. Maybe it was the eerie silence of the woods that added to the creepiness. We used to talk about how you could roll your windows down and you would hear nothing. No bugs, no animals, not even the wind. It was almost like nature had turned the sound off on itself. Tom and Ben now catch on to Terry's apparent fear. "Get out, I dare you to walk in alone," they say as they laugh and tease him. Terry was always an all-talk kind of guy, and his cold feet was in full effect. "Let's push him out," Ben jokingly says. Terry starts to become upset and pushes on the backs of their seats, taunting them to get out. This causes a small, playful fight to ensue as Tom and Ben lean their seats back, trying to wrestle Terry out the rear side door. Tom and Ben are rather large guys, kind of built like linebackers. Terry and myself are much smaller framed, so they had no issues overpowering us. As Terry struggles to keep the door locked, his yells go from a joking laugh to a panicked, incoherent mumble. I lean away from them and have a clear view of Terry's face. His eyes are fixated out the front windshield. He finally gathers his words and says sternly, "Guys, look!" They ignore Terry and continue their assault. This is the most serious I have ever seen Terry as his eyes continue growing wider. "Look!" he yells as he shoves both Ben and Tom aside and thrusts up towards the steering wheel, switching on the headlights. All of us stare forward in shock. When Terry hit the headlights, something came to a dead stop, no more than 20 feet in front of the car. It was a man, dressed head to toe in black, wearing a mask, which looked to be made from tree bark. He was just standing in the road, staring right back at us. As I said before, Ben and I had been here many times, and never have we seen anything strange. This was a first. After a moment, the man slowly starts to approach the car once again, crouched, staring at us as he makes for the passenger door. Tom and Ben snap out of their shock. They start screaming at the man, and Tom turns the car back on and hits the gas. The tires spin for a second in the gravel of the road, giving the man time to dive into the nearby ditch. Tom and Ben's fear turns to rage as they are now hanging out the window screaming at the strange man. I remember looking at the man, who remained crouched, taking aim at Ben's open window, as if he was going to attempt to lunge for it. His mask just had this lifeless, strange look to it. Terry is now staring out the back window, screaming for Tom to drive. As I look back, I see what Terry is staring at. Lights start to peek out from the trees and are coming towards the car. In the tree line are 2 rows of torches running up from the path leading from the cemetery. Tom, seeing this, finally hits the gas and we speed off. We all look back, seeing the torch lights enter the roadway and eventually disappear into the distance. We finally make it back to civilization. Shaken up by what just happened, we decided to stop at a local 24/7 diner. Tom is just staring at the table, silent. We ask him if he's all right. He looks at Ben, eyes wide. He says that when they arrived at the cemetery, he joked about needing to turn the car around in case we had to make a quick getaway, as there was only one way in and one way out. We all think about it for a second and let it sink in just how lucky we were. What if Tom didn't do that? What would have happened? I don't think we will be going back. My wife's parents often visited family out of state and would ask us to watch their house while they were away. This happened so often, it was like we basically lived there. We didn't know much about the neighborhood aside from it being a quiet one. Only one place in the whole street seemed somewhat questionable. It was a small brick building seated next to her parents' property, which we always thought was empty. Parking was difficult in our area as everyone had to use the street. As we met the neighbors, they told us to avoid parking in front of that brick building. When we asked what it was used for, no one really seemed to give us a straight answer, just that we should avoid it. A few weeks go by and nothing seems out of the ordinary. My wife Julie and I work a lot, and we finally end up having a night out and get back very late from it. We see that the street's parking is full, so we have no choice but to park in front of the brick building. All the lights are out and the front door is boarded, so to us it seemed like it was abandoned. As we are walking up to our front door, just about to go in, we hear from behind us a quiet voice say, "Excuse me." We spin around to see a small lady wearing a thick coat with a hood covering her face, standing on the sidewalk. Julie and I just share a look. Where did she come from? I ask her if I can help her in any way, and she pauses and just stares at us. After a second, she looks back towards our car and asks, "Is this you?" I realize that we parked where everyone told us not to, and I apologize for taking her spot. I tell her that we didn't think anyone was there who would mind. The lady says nothing, and after a moment of silence, she slowly walks off towards the brick building. She reaches the boarded up front door and stops, and then stares at us. We share an uncomfortable look, and then I unlock the door and go inside. Julie asks what that was all about, and something just doesn't feel right. I walk over to the window to see if she happens to be still standing in front of that door. We don't see her. There's no way she could have went in. Most all the windows and doors are boarded up. Julie then asks maybe she walked around the back. From what we can see from the window, the back of the building is all overgrown with weeds and high grass. What is she doing? And why is she hanging around a boarded up building past midnight? For the next few nights, we always had trouble sleeping because now we knew that somebody was hanging around that building. One night, very, very late, we're both awakened by some noise. Julie and I walk to the window, which happens to face the brick building. We think we hear something. I open the window so we can hear better, and that's when a chill crawls up our spine. From inside this boarded up building, sounds of screams and chanting can be heard. I pull up the camera on my phone and I begin to record. This is what was captured. Did you hear it? To this day, neighbors insist that that brick building is uninhabited. We eventually contacted local police and were told that reports have been made, but every time they investigate, they find nothing. So what's in there? What was happening that night? Where were those screams coming from? Thank you everyone for listening to this first video. I'd like to thank @SleepInFear for the video submitted on the brick building story. It's definitely some creepy stuff. I couldn't imagine waking up and hearing that kind of thing going on. Please click the like button and subscribe. Also, toll the bell so that you can get notifications of when we post a new video. I'll be posting as often as I can. I'll be reading stories from Reddit, as well as some real stories that I've heard just around from where I've lived and other people who've written into me. Until next time.